As the recorder played back the damning conversation, my heart sank. My wife's voice was unmistakable, filled with a tenderness I hadn't heard in years. But it wasn't directed at me. The betrayal was gut-wrenching. But nothing prepared me for what came next. When I confronted her mother for support, she looked me dead in the eye and said something that turned the entire situation upside down. Her words left me speechless and questioning everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. But before we dive deeper into this story, let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. The husband is a devoted man, always striving to take care of his family, but sometimes caught up in societal and traditional expectations. The wife, Jasmine, is a sensitive and strong woman who gradually feels lost and burdened by her role in the family. For this reason, Jasmine took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she began her confession. "I've carried this weight for so long and I don't know where to start. From the very first year of our marriage, I've felt trapped. The constant expectations, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, it was suffocating. Every decision seemed to revolve around others, your family's approval, our children's needs, and somewhere along the way, I lost sight of myself." Her eyes welled up with tears as she continued, her tone wavering between exhaustion and desperation. "I've tried so hard to do what's right, to stay for the kids, to keep this family together. But every day, a part of me fades away. I wake up wondering, is this all there is? I feel like I'm disappearing." Jasmine paused, her voice softer now, tinged with guilt. "I've thought about leaving, not because I don't care, but because I felt like I couldn't breathe. I longed for freedom, but the thought of breaking our family tore me apart. I thought I was doing the right thing by staying, but instead, I've only been hurting both of us." Her husband stared at her, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" he asked, his voice low but pained. I was afraid," she whispered, "afraid of hurting you, of failing everyone, but I didn't realize I was failing myself." The room fell into a heavy silence after Jasmine's confession. Her husband, Alex, sat motionless, his hands clenched into fists. His eyes, usually so steady, now darted aimlessly, as if searching for something solid in a world that had just crumbled. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice low, but heavy with pain. "All this time, I thought we were building something together, but now it feels like I've been living a lie." He stood, pacing the room as emotions spilled over. "Was I so blind, Jasmine? Did I miss every sign that you were drowning? Or was I just too consumed by my own sense of control to see it?" His voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on, the weight of betrayal and self-blame intertwined. "I should have known. I should have been better. For you. For us." Yet, even through the anguish, there was steel in his tone as he turned back to her. "I can't change the past. I can't erase the hurt we've caused each other. But I'll be damned if I let this destroy our children's future. They need stability, Jasmine. They need to know they're not losing everything." Taking a deep breath, Alex concluded with quiet resolve. "You may feel lost, but I'm not giving up on them. I'll fight for them. If I couldn't protect you, at least I'll protect them." The words hung in the air, a declaration of both grief and determination. Alex was tidying the study when he stumbled upon an old voice recorder tucked between a pile of disorganized papers. Its presence seemed ordinary, but something about it nagged at him. Curious, he pressed play. The static-filled silence was soon broken by familiar voices, one of which was unmistakably Jasmine's. Her voice, soft yet laden with emotion, cut through the air. "I don't know what I'd do without you. You've been my anchor when everything else felt like it was falling apart." Alex froze, the words reverberating in his mind. His breath hitched as a second voice, deeper and unmistakably belonging to his best friend, responded. "You deserve to be seen, Jasmine. I'll always be here for you, even if he isn't. His hand trembled, nearly dropping the recorder. He hit replay, disbelief battling with an urgent need to confirm what he had just heard. The exchanges played on, each word like a dagger. Their tones were intimate, filled with an understanding he hadn't shared with Jasmine in years. As the realization dawned, Alex's face twisted in a mix of anguish and fury. His eyes widened, and his breathing grew shallow, rapid, as if the walls of the room were closing in. The recorder slipped from his grasp, clattering onto the desk, but he barely noticed. "Jasmine," he whispered, his voice hollow, almost pleading. His mind raced back through moments with his best friend. Laughs, trust, brotherhood. How many times had they been in the same room, exchanging pleasantries, while this betrayal brewed in the shadows? The door creaked open, and Jasmine stepped in, startled by his pallor and the recorder sitting conspicuously between them. "Alex, what's wrong?" she asked cautiously, though the flicker of guilt in her eyes betrayed her. He stared at her, his expression shifting from disbelief to something far darker. "You. Him. How long?" His voice was low, yet it carried the weight of the storm within. Jasmine's face drained of color, her lips parting in shock. I can explain," she stammered, but Alex didn't wait. "Explain?" he interrupted, his voice rising. "Explain how the two people I trusted most, my wife, my best friend, managed to stab me in the back without me noticing? Explain what he gave you that I couldn't?" She stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached out, but he recoiled, his anger boiling over. "Don't!" he growled, his voice sharp enough to make her stop. "I heard everything, Jasmine. You leaned on him when you could have come to me. You chose him." Tears streamed down her face as she choked on her words. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lost, Alex. You didn't see me anymore, and he listened. He made me feel understood." Her admission cut deeper than the recording. Alex clenched his fists, his jaw tight as he tried to steady himself. "You think that justifies this?" he spat. "While I was here, breaking my back for this family, you sought comfort with him? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Jasmine sobbed openly, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to hurt you, or anyone. I was drowning, and he was there. I know it was wrong, but you did it anyway," Alex roared, his voice shaking with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. "You betrayed me, Jasmine, and he betrayed me too, the man I trusted like a brother." His words hung in the air, thick with finality. Jasmine crumbled into a chair, her hands covering her face, but Alex didn't move to comfort her. Instead, he turned toward the door, his shoulders stiff, as though holding the weight of the world. "I can't even look at you right now," he said quietly, his tone void of the warmth it once held. Before stepping out, he paused, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside. "This family may be broken, but I'll make damn sure our kids don't pay the price for your mistakes. Whatever it takes, Jasmine, I'll protect them." He turned and started once again, this time following the other victims into the house. As the door closed behind him, Jasmine was left alone in the room, the recorder's silence a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Her tears fell freely as she whispered to herself, "What have I done?" The rain poured heavily outside as Alex stormed into the dimly lit cafe where his best friend Eric sat waiting. The space, once a familiar refuge for the two of them, now felt stifling, charged with unspoken anger. Eric glanced up, his face uneasy, but Alex wasted no time. "You," Alex spat, his voice a mix of fury and disbelief. "Of all people." Eric stood, trying to maintain composure, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Alex, listen. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" Alex interrupted, his voice rising. "You didn't mean to betray me, to go behind my back and take what wasn't yours?" His hands trembled as he slammed the table, making the cups rattle. Eric's expression hardened, his voice steady but defensive. She was broken, Alex. She needed someone to see her, to listen. You stopped doing that a long time ago. Alex's eyes widened, his breath quickening. He took a step closer, towering over Eric. "Don't you dare put this on me," he growled, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I trusted you like a brother. I let you into my home, my family. And this is how you repay me?" Eric flinched but held his ground. "I didn't set out to hurt you, but I couldn't just stand by and watch her suffer. You don't know what it was like for her, Alex." And you do?" Alex barked, his voice dripping with contempt. "What gave you the right to step into my marriage, into my life, and play savior? You think you're the hero here?" Eric's eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and defiance. "I never claimed to be a hero," he said quietly. "But someone had to fill the void you left. She was drowning, and you didn't even notice." Alex's hands balled into fists, his knuckles white. He turned away for a moment, running a hand through his hair, as memories flashed through his mind. Late nights spent confiding in Eric, laughter shared over beers, the trust he had never once doubted. He turned back, his face a mask of pain. "I gave you everything, my trust, my friendship, and you threw it all away. For what? Was it worth it, Eric?" Eric's jaw tightened, and he looked away, unable to meet Alex's piercing gaze. "It wasn't about being worth it," he muttered. "It was about her. She deserved to feel loved, something you stopped giving her a long time ago." "Huh." Alex's composure finally snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing Eric by the collar and shoving him against the wall. The sound echoed through the empty cafe, but neither man cared. Alex's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You don't get to talk about love. Not after what you've done. Not after you betrayed me and my family." Eric's face twisted with a mix of shame and defiance. "And what about her, Alex? Have you ever stopped to think about how she felt? About why she turned to me? You were so focused on everything else, you forgot about her." Alex's grip tightened for a moment before he shoved Eric back, his hands trembling. "Don't you dare act like you did this for her," he snapped. "You didn't save her, you destroyed her. You destroyed everything." Eric straightened his jacket, his breathing uneven. "Believe what you want," he said, his voice low but steady. "But at least I gave her something you couldn't. A reason to smile." Alex froze, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to seep into the room, its coldness wrapping around them. His voice was quiet but filled with an unshakable finality as he said, "You didn't just lose me, Eric. You lost yourself." Without another word, Alex turned and walked out into the rain, leaving Eric alone in the empty cafe. The door swung shut behind him with a heavy thud, a sound that echoed the fracture in their bond. As the rain soaked through his clothes, Alex let out a guttural cry, a mix of anger, pain, and despair. Inside, Eric sat back down, his hands shaking as he stared at the table. The weight of his actions hung heavy in the air, but he convinced himself of one final thought. At least she knew someone cared. Yet, even as he repeated the words in his mind, they rang hollow, their emptiness matching the void left by the friendship he had destroyed. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room. Jasmine stood by the window, wringing her hands nervously, as she watched her eldest son Daniel sit on the couch, his face unreadable. She had called him to talk after sensing his growing distance, but now that they were alone, the words felt heavier than she'd anticipated. "Daniel," she began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you've been quiet lately. I need to know what's going on. Please talk to me." Daniel didn't look up. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his jaw tight. For a moment, The only sound was the ticking of the clock. Finally, he broke the silence. "I don't think you really want to know, Mom." Jasmine flinched at the coldness in his tone. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I do, Daniel. Whatever it is, you can tell me." He looked up then, his gaze piercing and filled with a mix of anger and sorrow that made her heart sink. "I heard everything," he said bluntly. "You and him. I heard the truth." The room seemed to tilt, and Jasmine felt the air leave her lungs. "Daniel, she started, but the words caught in her throat. "You lied to us," Daniel continued, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. "All those times you told us family comes first, that we should trust you. Was it all a lie? Were you pretending the whole time?" Jasmine's hand shook as she reached out to him. "It wasn't like that. I never wanted to hurt you or your siblings. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But I love you. I've always loved you." Daniel stood abruptly, stepping back as if her words physically pushed him away. His voice rose, filled with pain. "How could you say that? How can you claim to love us when you've destroyed everything we believed in? You weren't just my mom. You were the one I looked up to. And now?" He paused, his chest heaving, the weight of his emotions bearing down on him. "Start low," Catherine said. "A low, but smart." Jasmine's eyes brimmed with tears. "Daniel, please. I'm still your mother. I know I failed you, but..." "But what?" he interrupted, his voice suddenly quiet but cutting. He turned away, his shoulders slumped as though carrying an unbearable burden. After a long pause, he said, "I don't know who you are anymore." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, the silence that followed amplifying their impact. Jasmine froze, her hands falling to her sides. She wanted to reach out, to hold him, to explain, but the chasm between them felt insurmountable. Daniel took a deep breath, his back still to her. "I used to think you were the strongest person I knew, someone who would never let us down, no matter what. But now, I can't even look at you the same way." Jasmine bit her lip, tears streaming down her face. "I'm still here, Daniel. I'm still your mom. I'm trying to make things right." He turned to face her, his expression now one of exhaustion rather than anger. "Some things can't be fixed, Mom. You broke something in me, in us. I don't know if it'll ever be the same." With that, he walked out of the room, leaving Jasmine standing alone in the fading light. Her knees buckled, and she sank into the nearest chair, her sobs muffled by her hands. The echo of Daniel's words, "I don't know who you are anymore," replayed in her mind, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. As the room grew darker, Jasmine stared at the empty doorway, her heart heavy with the realization that rebuilding her relationship with her son would be the hardest battle of her life. Yet even in the depth of her despair, a flicker of determination sparked. She would fight for his trust, no matter how long it took. The dining room, once a place of warmth and laughter, now felt suffocating. Jasmine sat at the end of the long table, her shoulders hunched as her parents and siblings surrounded her. The air was heavy with tension, the remnants of untouched tea and snacks scattered across the table. Her father paced the room, his footsteps echoing like a ticking clock, while her mother sat, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Her father finally stopped, his face red with anger. "Jasmine, what were you thinking? Do you realize what you've done to this family? The shame you've brought us?" Jasmine opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off, his voice rising. "Your husband came to me, Jasmine. He told me everything. Do you know how humiliating it is to face the neighbors, the community, knowing what my daughter has done?" Her mother's voice, trembling yet sharp, joined in. "We taught you to live for the family, Jasmine, to put others before yourself. But all you've done is think of yourself, your own desires." Jasmine's hands tightened into fists on her lap. She tried to hold her composure, but the weight of their accusations pressed on her like a boulder. Finally, she snapped, her voice cracking with frustration. Who thought of me all these years? She shouted, slamming her hand on the table. The sudden noise made everyone flinch. You talk about living for the family, but what about me? When did anyone ask if I was happy, if I was okay? Her siblings exchanged uncomfortable glances, but her mother leaned forward, her voice icy. We all make sacrifices, Jasmine. You're not the only one. But instead of holding your family together, you've torn it apart. The words hit Jasmine like a slap. She looked around the room, searching for even a glimmer of understanding, but all she saw were judgmental stares. Her brother, who rarely spoke in such meetings, finally broke the silence. You should have thought about the kids, Jasmine. They're the real victims here. Jasmine laughed bitterly, her voice trembling. Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I live with that guilt every single day? But no one understands what it felt like. Feeling invisible, suffocated, like I was just a role to play and not a person. Her father shook his head, his disappointment evident. That's no excuse. Your actions have consequences, Jasmine. Your husband was willing to fight for this family. Why weren't you? The words stung, and Jasmine's vision blurred with tears. She looked down at her hands, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to keep from breaking completely. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You've never understood. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by her mother's soft sobs. Jasmine glanced at the photo frame on the mantel, a family portrait taken years ago, when smiles had come easily and the cracks beneath the surface were hidden. The frame was now crooked, the glass slightly chipped, a stark reminder of how fragile everything had become. Her father sighed heavily, running a hand through his thinning hair. You need to fix this, Jasmine, he said, his tone more weary than angry now. For the kids, if not for yourself. Jasmine looked up, her eyes red but defiant. I'm trying, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. But I can't fix this alone. And right now, all I feel is everyone pushing me further down. Her mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Then maybe you should think about what you've done and stop blaming others, she said coldly, before walking out of the room. The others followed suit, leaving Jasmine alone at the table. She sat in silence, staring at the chipped glass of the photo frame. Her mind replayed her mother's words, her father's disappointment, her brother's judgment. The tea on the table had gone cold, much like the warmth in her family. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, tears silently falling. The room felt emptier than ever, its stillness a reflection of her own isolation. Yet amidst the despair, she clenched her fists, a flicker of resolve in her chest. If no one else would stand by her, she would stand for herself. She had to. For her children, and for whatever fragments of herself she could still salvage. The courtroom was filled with an oppressive silence as the judge called the custody hearing to order. Jasmine sat on one side, her hands clenched tightly together, while her husband, Alex, sat opposite her, his expression hardened with determination. Between them, their children's future hung precariously. The proceedings began with Alex's lawyer laying out his case. Your Honor, Mr. Carter seeks full custody of his children. He has been the stable, consistent parent, providing the structure and support necessary for their well-being. The actions of Mrs. Carter, as evidenced by her behavior, have introduced instability that no child should endure. Jasmine's heart sank as the lawyer's words echoed in the courtroom. She glanced at Alex, whose face was unreadable, though the tension in his posture was evident. When it was Jasmine's turn, her voice trembled but held firm. Your Honor, my children are my world. They are the reason I've fought through everything. I know I've made mistakes, terrible ones, but I love them more than anything. I am working every day to become a better person and a better mother. Alex suddenly stood, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. And what about the damage you've already done, Jasmine? Do you think love is enough to erase that? I have to protect them from your decisions, from the chaos you brought into our lives. Jasmine turned to him, her eyes blazing with a mix of anger and desperation. I made mistakes, but that doesn't mean I don't deserve to be their mother. You act like you're the only one who can protect them. But they need both of us, Alex. They need to see that even broken people can heal. The judge intervened, urging calm, but the tension remained palpable. The lawyers argued back and forth, presenting evidence and character testimonies, each detail sharpening the divide between Jasmine and Alex. Finally, the judge addressed them both, her voice steady yet empathetic. This is not an easy decision, but my priority is the children's stability. For now, primary custody will be awarded to Mr. Carter, with Mrs. Carter granted supervised visitation. The words struck Jasmine like a blow. She gasped, her chest tightening as the reality set in. The children, her anchor, her hope, were being taken from her. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "No, please." Alex's expression softened for a brief moment, but he quickly masked it, nodding to the judge. Jasmine sat frozen, her mind reeling as the gavel fell, finalizing the decision. The days that followed were a blur of emptiness. Jasmine's home, once filled with the sounds of her children's laughter, was now eerily silent. Their rooms remained untouched, toys scattered as if they might return at any moment. But they didn't. She spiraled into despair, withdrawing from friends and family. Plates of untouched food gathered on her kitchen counter, and her phone buzzed with messages she couldn't bear to read. Nights were the hardest, the quiet magnifying the ache in her heart. Yet, amidst the darkness, something shifted. One evening, as she sat staring at a photo of her children, their smiles frozen in time, she felt a spark of determination. They needed her, even if from a distance. She couldn't let them see her like this, broken and defeated. Slowly, Jasmine began to rebuild. She sought therapy, pouring out her regrets and fears to someone who finally listened without judgment. She attended parenting workshops, learning new ways to connect with her children and build trust. She also threw herself into community work, volunteering at local shelters and schools, finding purpose in helping others. Each small victory, whether it was cooking a meal or receiving a kind word from a stranger, felt like a step toward healing. Her supervised visits with the children became the highlight of her week. She used those moments to show them her love, reading their favorite books, drawing with them, and listening to their stories with genuine interest. Over time, the children began to respond. Her youngest clung to her during visits, and even her eldest, who had been distant, started to soften. Though the road ahead was long, Jasmine held on to the hope that her efforts would eventually show them she was still their mother, still worthy of their love. Months later, Jasmine sat in a courtroom again, her posture straighter, her voice steadier. She looked at Alex, who seemed less rigid, less angry. The judge noted her progress, her commitment to change, and began discussing joint custody arrangements. As Jasmine left the courtroom that day, the weight on her shoulders felt a little lighter. The battle wasn't over, but she had taken the first steps toward regaining her place in her children's lives. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to smile. She had fought for them, for herself. And though there was much to mend, the cracks were beginning to heal. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the custody hearing reached its climax. Alex, seated across the room, leaned forward, his tone resolute. "Your Honor, my priority is the children's safety and stability. Jasmine has shown she cannot provide that. I need to protect them from the chaos her choices have created." Jasmine's breath hitched, his words cutting deeper than any blade. "Chaos?" she retorted, her voice rising. "Yes, I made mistakes, but don't act like you were perfect. You shut me out, Alex. You refused to see me. I'm still their mother. They need me as much as they need you." The judge raised a hand, calling for order. The room quieted, the air thick with unspoken accusations. After a long pause, the judge delivered the verdict. "Given the circumstances, Primary custody will be granted temporarily to Mr. Carter. Mrs. Carter will have supervised visitation. The gavel struck, and Jasmine felt her world collapse. Her knees threatened to give way, and tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "No, this can't be happening." Alex glanced at her briefly, his expression a mix of relief and regret, but he said nothing. In the weeks that followed, Jasmine's home became a shell of what it once was. The laughter of her children was replaced by suffocating silence. Their rooms remained untouched, the toys and clothes frozen in place like artifacts of a life now out of reach. Jasmine would sit for hours, staring at the empty walls, her mind replaying the judge's words over and over. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages of concern from friends and family, but she ignored them. Food went uneaten, her energy drained by the weight of her despair. She blamed herself entirely, her mind consumed with thoughts of everything she had done wrong. "Maybe Alex is right," she murmured to the emptiness around her. "Maybe I'm not enough." But one day, as she sat in the dim light of her living room, a small voice broke through her fog of despair. Her youngest child's words during their last supervised visit. "Mommy, I love you." The memory stirred something deep within her, a flicker of hope. She realized that as much as she had lost, there was still something to fight for. Determined to change, Jasmine sought help. She began therapy, unpacking years of pain and guilt. Her therapist's gentle guidance helped her confront her mistakes, but also reminded her of her strength. Slowly, she began to rebuild, taking small steps every day. She joined a support group for single mothers, finding solace in shared stories of resilience. She volunteered at a local shelter, channeling her pain into helping others. Each visit with her children became a beacon of hope. She poured her heart into every moment with them, reading their favorite books, drawing with them, and listening intently to their stories. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Her children, once distant, began to warm to her again. Even Alex, who had been so firm, seemed to soften as he saw the changes in her. Though the journey was far from over, Jasmine stood a little taller, her resolve strengthening with each passing day. She knew she couldn't change the past, but she could shape the future, for her children and for herself. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that she could become the mother they deserved. Losing custody of her children was a moment Jasmine described as the darkest abyss she had ever faced. It was as if the world stopped turning, she later reflected, her voice tinged with the raw pain that still lingered. The silence of their absence was deafening, and for weeks she existed in a haze of regret and despair, questioning every choice she had made. Yet as time passed, she realized this loss forced her to confront the truth she had long avoided, that she had neglected parts of herself and her family in ways she hadn't fully understood. It wasn't just about losing them, she admitted. It was about losing the illusion that I was doing enough. That clarity, though painful, became her turning point. The loss, as unbearable as it was, drove her to rebuild, not just for her children, but for the person she wanted to become. In the weeks following the custody decision, Jasmine buried herself in denial, clinging to the belief that she had been unfairly judged. "I was trying my best," she would tell herself, justifying her actions as she navigated the emptiness of her home. But the weight of her children's absence and the haunting echoes of their laughter began to chip away at her defenses. One evening during a therapy session, her counselor gently asked, "Have you truly looked at your role in all of this?" The question struck a nerve, and for the first time, Jasmine allowed herself to sit with the uncomfortable truth. The tears came suddenly, accompanied by a flood of memories, moments when she had chosen her needs over her family's, when she had failed to communicate or show up fully. "I lost sight of what mattered," Jasmine admitted, her voice breaking. "I was so focused on escaping my pain that I didn't see the pain I was causing them." Gradually, as she unpacked her mistakes, she began to see the path forward. Her realization crystallized one day as she spoke to a support group. Losing everything made me realize I had put myself before my family for too long, she said, her voice steady but filled with regret. Now I have to put them first, not just in words, but in every choice I make. This shift in perspective became her anchor. Acknowledging her faults didn't erase the past, but it gave her the clarity to rebuild with intention and humility, determined to prove that she could be the mother her children deserved. Jasmine's journey toward forgiveness began not with grand gestures, but with small, intentional acts. She threw herself into the community, not only to rebuild her life, but also to show her children that actions spoke louder than words. At their school, she volunteered to lead a recycling program, organizing workshops for parents and students. If I can be part of their world, even in little ways, maybe they'll see how much I care, she thought. Her youngest child was the first to respond. One evening, during a supervised visit, the child shyly handed Jasmine a crayon drawing of the two of them holding hands. Jasmine's heart swelled as she gently asked, "Is this us?" The child nodded, a small smile breaking through their cautious demeanor. It was the first glimmer of hope, a sign that her efforts were beginning to reach them. Her eldest, Daniel, remained distant, but over time, even his guarded walls began to crack. One day, after watching Jasmine direct a successful charity event for the school, he muttered, "You're really trying, aren't you?" Though his tone was hesitant, Jasmine caught the faintest note of approval. "Yes," she replied simply, "for you, for all of us." As Jasmine rebuilt her relationship with her children, her personal transformation began to inspire others. A local parenting group invited her to speak, and though she hesitated at first, she realized her story could offer solace to those struggling. At her first event, she stood before an audience of young mothers, her voice steady yet humble. "I lost everything," she began, "but in losing, I found what really matters. I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to rebuild." After her talk, a student approached, their question filled with curiosity and doubt. "Do you feel you deserve forgiveness?" Jasmine paused, the weight of her journey reflected in her gaze. "No," she admitted honestly, "but I will keep living in a way that earns it." Her words resonated deeply, drawing applause from the audience. Through her dedication, Jasmine showed not only her children but also herself that healing was possible. Slowly, the bond she thought she had shattered began to mend. Her children's trust returned, piece by piece, as they witnessed her unwavering commitment. As Jasmine stood hand in hand with her children at another community event, she knew the road ahead would still have challenges. Yet, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, driven by the knowledge that her love for them and their belief in her was worth every step.